Hello, and today's learning target is I can determine if two lines are perpendicular, and I can write an equation through a point given a perpendicular line. So I should say "and" right there. And so I know we've discussed parallel lines. And again, the relationship between two parallel lines is that the slopes are equal or the same. Now today, when we talk about perpendicular, the relationship between two perpendicular lines is that the slopes are opposite reciprocals. So what this means is when we see that slope in that first equation for that first line, to get a slope perpendicular to that line or equation, we will flip and change the sign of that slope. So flip and change the sign. We'll go over a couple examples to see what exactly this means. So we'll find the perpendicular slopes here. So I'll zoom in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the slope. So I can highlight the slope, I can circle it, I can just look at it. I'll highlight it. So that slope is -3/2. Okay? So I need to find the opposite reciprocal, which means I need to flip that fraction and change the sign. If it's positive, it must turn into negative. If it's negative, it turns into positive. So this is called the opposite reciprocal. And again, this will make two lines be perpendicular or form 90-degree angles if we were to graph these on a coordinate plane. So if I flip this slope, it now becomes 2/3, and it's negative to begin with, so it needs to turn positive. So the perpendicular slope of -3/2 would be 2/3. The second example, again, I can highlight the slope if that will help. So it's 1/2 to begin with. So I'll flip that fraction. So it's m equals 2/1, and I don't need to write the over 1. And it was positive to begin with, so it now turns negative. So the opposite reciprocal of 1/2 is -2. All right, and let's continue. So now, if we look at this next example, the slope is -4. So that's really like -4/1, right? So if I flip that, and it's negative, so if it starts negative, it will end up being positive, so I'll get rid of the negative sign. If I flip 4/1, I get 1/4 would be the opposite reciprocal slope. All right, y equals 2x minus 3. I will, again, that's over 1, so I'll flip that to give me 1/2, and then it's positive to begin with, so it will be negative then for the opposite reciprocal. All right, last two examples. I have y equals x minus 2, which is really 1/1, right? So if I flip that around, it's just 1/1, but then I have to change the sign, so it would be -1. Last, then y equals -1/4 x plus 3. I'll go ahead and I'll flip that 1/4 to 4/1, and it's negative to begin with, so it'll end up being positive. So again, here was just some practice on finding the opposite reciprocal slopes of perpendicular lines. All right, now let's look at the steps to writing a perpendicular line. Very similar to the steps to write a parallel line, but just one minor change. So number 1, identify the slope of the perpendicular line. This is the difference, right? Because for perpendicular lines and their slopes, we have to flip and change the sign, right? So we need the opposite reciprocal slope. Step 2, plug x, y, and m into y equals mx plus b. Step 3, solve for b. And 4, write your final equation in slope-intercept form. If you find rewriting linear equations easier, then you could write this in point-slope form and rewrite to slope-intercept form. So again, there's that extra or something else, something slightly different that we could do a little extra instead of going through the steps above. So we'll write a linear equation, and this should say perpendicular. Let's fix that there. I'm going to zoom in. Write a linear equation perpendicular to the following lines through the given points. Okay, so let's take a look at this first example. Perpendicular to 1/2 x plus 1 through the point 4, 2. So what I need to do first is I need to look at this slope, and the slope is 1/2, and I need to find the perpendicular slope to that. So if I flip and change the sign, m now is, oops, need to get the writing utensil. M now is negative 2. So into y equals mx plus b, I will put x and y, and my slope that's highlighted, or no, sorry, my new slope that I wrote of negative 2, that's the opposite reciprocal of the highlighted slope, and I'll solve for b. So what this will look like is 2 equals m, which is negative 2 times 4 plus b. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. We'll add 8 to both sides, so b equals 10. So if I write this or put this all together in slope-intercept form, I get y equals negative 2x plus 10. And that's the equation that's perpendicular to y equals 1/2 x plus 1 that goes through the specific point of 4, 2. All right, let's look at the next example. Okay, so perpendicular, let's write a line that's perpendicular to y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4 through the point 2, negative 3. So m, my new slope, will be positive 3/2. And then into y equals mx plus b, I will say negative 3 equals m times x plus b. And 3/2 times 2, that's like 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. Your denominator in your first fraction is the same as the numerator in the second term, second number, if it's 2 over 1, and those cancel out, so it just leaves with 3. So it's negative 3 equals 3 plus b, subtract 3, so b equals negative 6. So if I write this all together in slope-intercept form, y equals 3/2 x minus 6. And again, that would be the line that's perpendicular to y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4. That goes through that specific point of 2, negative 3. Okay, let's get the example up here. So perpendicular to y equals negative 3x minus 6 through the point 6, 2. So m would be 1/3. And then into y equals mx plus b, I have negative 2 equals 1/3 times 6 plus b. 1/3 of 6 is 2. So negative 2 equals 2 plus b. Subtract 2, so b equals negative 4. So my final answer here in slope-intercept form would be y equals 1/3 x minus 4. And now for this last example, I'll go ahead and plug in the point and slope into point-slope form, and then we'll rewrite to slope-intercept form. So just give one example. And I know we can also do this with parallel lines as well. So when I find the opposite reciprocal slope here, it's negative 1. So the opposite reciprocal would be flip and change the sign, so positive 1. So point slope form again is y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. So I'll say y, and then I have to put in a negative 7 in for y, so that's going to change. It's going to have a minus a negative, which is chop chop plus. My slope is 1, won't really change much when I distribute that. And then x minus, or actually x plus 8, because again it's a negative 8. So two negatives will make a positive. Then I'll distribute that 1 and get y plus 7 equals x plus 8. Subtract 7 and get y equals x plus 1. And then that would be the line that's perpendicular to y equals negative x minus 8 that goes through that point of negative 8, negative 7. And if you would have went through the steps of plugging in the point, the slope, into slope-intercept form and solving for b, you would have gotten the same answer as y equals x plus 1. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.